And thanks for the intro. My name is Tyson Quick. I am the founder and current chief growth officer at Postclick, where we focus on automating digital conversion. And I want to make this conversation a little bit more conversational today. One of the benefits of having a small group like this is we can ask some questions of you, and get some hands going up, and have a conversation together. So I started Instapage and now Postclick because I was always fascinated in the power that we now have as marketers, right? We really take for granted the capabilities that we have today. And at the time when I started Instapage, I just found it incredibly fascinating that we have the tools to reach any customer on the planet, essentially, with precision, thanks to modern day digital advertising technologies in Facebook and Google and other tools that we have. But one of the things that I felt was missing is, even with these tools, myself and everyone I talked to was only seeing a conversion rate of around 1 to at best 5%. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. We had these incredible tools to reach people and get them to engage with an ad. And then we were only seeing, we were personally seeing about 3%. And so that's a huge inefficiency, right? That inefficiency is still really in play today. Today, there's $600 billion in digital advertising spend alone per year. 60% of that is direct response. So people are paying for an action they want to occur right then and there. The rest is brand advertising, of course. So with a 3% conversion rate, this is hundreds of billions of dollars in waste. Now, Google and Facebook are fine with this, right? They're some of the largest companies on the planet. It's created many of the billionaires. But what about us? What about the people that are putting all this money in? Now, if we can make this more successful, if we can improve this, the results of this investment, what would it do for our businesses, our companies, our careers? And that's really what I got focused on. So the answer really is what we have available to us today, which is leveraging machine learning, artificial intelligence, and our capabilities as marketers and storytellers. So before I jump in, I want to ask everyone here, I want to get a few examples. It should be a very easy question. What things in your life day to day are you using that include either automation or artificial intelligence? Think about it for a second, and then maybe we can get a few people to give an answer. And if you don't, I'll have some suggestions. Looks like we have at least one person over here that knows something.
When I start my day, my Google Home, I say good morning, and then all these other automations start, like my favorite radio station and podcasts or things like that.
That's fantastic. That's actually I did a presentation on this very thing, like your life of automation. That was the very first thing that I used as well is waking up and having home automation, talking to, I think you said either Google Home or Google Home to turn things on. And that of course has to hear you, has to interpret what you say, and then has to take action. Is there any other examples of how you think you're using artificial intelligence today? Anyone out there? We got one over here.
Thank you. I was gonna say dynamic search campaigns. So letting the algorithm scope websites and then create keywords based off of your relevant landing page.
Yeah. The answer there is dynamic search campaigns. I love the marketing focused answer. Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, Google's increasingly pushing more and more advertisers to use one of two types of ads, which is dynamic search ads, which actually scans your website and produces the ad for you to align with your content. And the second is responsive search ads, which allows you to create a bunch of different headlines, descriptions, and it will rotate and try to match with the right person. So thanks for those two answers. There's a number of other things, of course. When we go to watch movies on Netflix, it's recommending us things that it thinks we may like. When we go to look for plane tickets, right, it's automatically figuring out the best price for the destination and the demand. If I get in a Tesla and I hit self-driving mode, it's going to drive me on the freeway. It's going to drive me around. Even the traffic signals in that ride are going to be using some type of algorithm. And the list goes on and on. Of course, this is how digital advertising itself works. It's powered by automation today. So really everything that we do throughout our day, we're actually very dependent now on algorithms. So how, as marketers, are we leveraging these technologies in our own careers? And we'll get into that today. But before I go into specifics on that, let's talk about the evolution of digital advertising. Let's just take a second to think about how far we've already come, right? Back in the good old days, the Mad Men days, all of us in this room, if we were marketers at that time period, things were pretty simple, right? I mean, you had to be even more creative probably because you're building commercials, you're really focused on visuals and storytelling, but you didn't have this massive proliferation of digital technologies and supercomputers in everyone's pockets with thousands of different apps, or I guess millions of different apps and millions of things vying for people's attention. So the customer journey, thanks to digital technologies, has both become very powerful for us to leverage, but also incredibly complex. And we are now at the point, thanks to the evolution of these technologies, where we have tremendous options enabling us to be able to communicate and reach customers. But they also have us as consumers, we have an infinite number of ways to spend our time. And the evolution of these technologies is what drives the evolution of our industry as well. And we have reached a point where the complexity is so great, the scale is so profound, that unless we fully embrace what machines are good at, it's impossible for us to actually meet the demands of the consumer today. It truly is. Believe me, I've tried to do things manually and realized that it's not going to be possible to. I'm on the wrong slide here. So there we go. Sorry about that. It's just not going to be possible for us to meet the demands of the consumer, right? It just simply is not feasible. So also with this evolution of digital advertising and technology proliferation, consumer expectations have also gone vertical, right? The consumer today wants personalized, relevant content because that's how they spend their entire day. They wake up and interact with their Google Home, and the Google Home, changes things based on the settings that they prefer. Their news feeds on their whatever news feed that they're using, less and less Facebook these days, but many other options, are personalized to them, right? So we actually really appreciate personalized content because our time is limited, and we don't want the mass media of olden times. People want relative narratives. They want relevant narratives. They want you to speak to them like an individual, like a unique person, with compelling stories, not just information thrown into an ad or on a landing page or a website. They want to read a story of value. What's in it for me? Why should I care? And third of all, it just really needs to be customer-centric advertising. If I'm scrolling in a news feed, what actually matters to that customer in that setting? So our demands have gone up. It's gone up vertically as the technology itself has evolved. So in short, they want to be spoken to as individuals, but trying to meet the needs of an individual when our customer bases oftentimes are in the thousands or even millions that we're trying to reach, and so that can be very difficult. So let's go into the state of digital advertising today. So the key to sustaining success in a fast-paced industry really requires three main things. It requires greater efficiency in the processes so we can meet this scale. It needs more precise capabilities in the marketing technologies that we're using, right? Taking advantage of things like dynamic search ads or marketing automation for us to actually meet this demand in a way that actually makes sense. So we can focus on storytelling and narratives, the things that really drive what we're good at as humans. We need to be focusing on those things. And like I've alluded to, we need to focus on an unprecedented scale, right? I mean, think about how many search queries you make per day, or how many web pages you go to per day, and how many emails that you open per day, and then times this by thousands or millions of customer interactions. So we need to meet that scale. And I'm here to tell you that the future is now. This isn't coming, it's still growing, it's still accelerating, but the future is already here. We talked about a couple examples of how AI is already driving our day-to-day lives. Just think for a second that if you didn't have your phone with you and you lost it, this actually happened to me. I was on a river trip and I broke my phone. I didn't have a phone for a week, and I just realized how dependent I had become on this kind of human computer relationship that I had created. And I couldn't get maps to where I needed to go, and I had to, borrow people's. I had to actually borrow my mom's phone to get to a place when I went and and visited her to drive to a friend's house. I couldn't stay in contact with my employees. And I really, was quite bored because I couldn't pull up my daily news and see what's happening in the world, which was kind of nice to take a break. But I didn't realize how dependent I had become. And this is even more so when we're trying to grow our marketing efforts. So this is happening. So marketers are already embracing new tech. Marketers are exploring AI-powered conversion optimization. Who here thinks that your team, or you, if it's your responsibility, has mastered conversion rate optimization? Right? Nobody. Maybe one. Maybe one. It's always good to have the one person in the room. And the reason why I believe this is the case is because something as technical as conversion optimization, something that's also incredibly important, is also incredibly hard. Not only because we have kind of an ideation stagnation, we don't even know what to test, and we also test in silos, right? We start a test and we say, okay, we're going to do this test. We don't get the benefit of the collective. And we also are just limited with time and resources and know-how. Even if you want to get started, you have to oftentimes go out and consume a tremendous amount of information to even know how to get started. So we really haven't hit a mainstream period where things as technical as conversion optimization have really taken off, even though the technology has been around for quite some time. But now in 2022, because of the growth of this industry and the growth of technologies that are coming out every single day, we did a survey of 150 different marketing leaders at the beginning of the year. 61% of the marketers that we spoke to are considering adopting AI in 2022. So who here is thinking about how you might leverage AI or machine learning here in the next year or two? Raise your hands. Okay, we got about 10 to 12 of you. Hopefully by the end of this, we got all of you thinking about it. There's many ways you can create this relationship. And it's even more important amongst D2C. So if you are a direct consumer focused business, doing retail, you're speaking directly to customers and you're going straight to the customer, it's even more profound among this cohort than it even is on the general B2C cohort. But both of these cohorts are already using AI or machine learning more often. Okay, so let's look at some numbers here. This is always a great slide. You always want to have that one slide where you want to maybe take a picture of it to show your manager, show your boss, or just to get buy-in. Well, we at Postclick, we really keep our pulse on the data side of this. Can we prove that these results are meaningful and profound, and that the investment in it pays for itself? And what we found is across 11 industries, those marketers who are using artificial intelligence see an average conversion rate up to 300% greater than those marketers who are not, right? You can see some of these benchmarks over here. Just taking the first one as an example, the average conversion rate for retail is 4.23%. So 95+% of ad spend is going to waste. It's just going straight into the bank accounts of Mark Zuckerberg and others. But over here, marketers using AI for helping them bid, of course. There's some examples that was provided over here, but also those who are using AI copywriting or AI optimization are seeing 17.4%. So think about what it would do in your company or in your efforts if you could increase your results by 300% merely by adopting these new technologies. It's a huge difference. And you scale this as your investments in digital advertising go up. You know, if your company spends $1 million to 10 million, think about the sheer amount of capital freed up by leveraging, working with the machines to get these types of results. It's absolutely profound, and it's proven in data. So these trends all point to one direction. First, advertisers will require AI expertise. So if you're doing any type of advertising, or you plan to, or that one didn't go up. Come on. There we go. It's coming in slow. Wanted to really make you guys anticipate that. Are you super impressed with that? Live up to your expectations? So it's going to require AI expertise. Not that you're going to have to be some data scientist or you're going to be in there being some coder, because at the end of the day, as marketers, we really are storytellers, the creatives, we are communicators. But we are going to have to learn more about these technologies. We're going to have to bring them into our company. If we don't, we will fall behind to those who do this. It's just the nature of the progression of the technology. The second one is that there's just a new standard of customer experience. So if we're going to meet the quality in which all of our customers expect of us at scale, then we need to up-level the way that we're speaking to them. And the only way that we can actually do that at scale, unless you have some giant army of marketers on your team, which I've seen. I've seen a 110-person team at HelloFresh all doing some massive amount of landing page building and personalization at scale. But if you don't have 110 people and you're maybe a team of 1 or a team of 3, the only way you're going to meet the expectation of the customer is if you leverage AI. Now, let's think about that for a second. So what do I mean? Let's give you one example of a customer experience and how this might impact you and how scale matters. So right now, if you go to Google, if you will, and you make a specific search query, right? You have something that you have in mind, and you write that search query in a certain way. It shows your intent, it shows you and your mentality. And a ad is brought up that matches that, because that's the business Google's in, right? They're helping try to make sure that the ad you're presented with is relevant, because they're in the relevancy business. And you click on that ad and you're taken to a generally, broad landing page, right? Because you just couldn't meet the scale in which the customer required at scale. And this is why you're going to end up having this 3-4% conversion rate, because you weren't able to actually continue that story from the highly targeted, highly relevant ad to the place that you sent them. So we shouldn't even expect that's going to work, because if you're not relevant, then you're not relevant to the customer, right? And third of all, it will require personalization, right? Across the entire funnel. Now, relevancy and intent are slightly different from personalization. Personalization is really about building audiences and understanding those audiences. How can you use technology to help you better understand your customer? Because what I've seen is, and I'm guilty of it myself, is that we often try to put our head into the customer's. We kind of impersonify the customer, but really, oftentimes, most times, the customer doesn't think exactly like we do, right? If I go to a car lot and I'm going to buy a new car, the questions that I'm going to ask the sales rep are almost never going to be the exact questions that you ask, and especially not in the same order that you ask them. So what do we really know about the people we're trying to target and the people we're trying to talk to? You can use machines and technology to help you better have context on who you're speaking to in the first place. And all of this is going to work together so that we can increase the customer experience, right? You will be able to use the technology for the scale, and you'll be able to better focus on your communication and your creativity and the content that you're making, right? You'll be able to make uh, 5,000 videos on basketball, right? That's impressive. I was very impressed by that. While the machine, in the case of YouTube, helps find the right person to deliver it to. So, who is in control here? Now, we like to think that we're in control more than we are, right? When we wake up and we're, building some dynamic, or we're turning on dynamic search ads, or we're writing an email, or we're coming up with a new campaign, we really, try to think that in a lot of ways we're in control of what's happening. But that's not the case at all. The customer is absolutely in full control. The conversion journey is not set by us. We've tried to look at this a ton, try to find patterns and whatnot. But with all of the technologies that are available to us today and all of the content channels, it's nearly impossible to predict exactly the pathway a customer is going to take before they make a decision to go with whatever service or product that we're trying to offer them. So the customer has complete control over that. Now, and the expectations are higher than ever, and they're not going to change. We've seen a huge shift in the last couple of years where the consumers now are demanding more of marketers and more of their data privacy, and their expectations have gone up a ton, right? We're seeing, we'll talk about it here in a second, Apple introduce, privacy settings that block just the anonymous tracking that we've used, that we've taken advantage of maybe. Now we need to focus more on building quality relationships with our customers that increase trust and increase our ability to tell high quality stories. And then I alluded to it a second ago, but the customer is oversaturated with information. I mean, I at least can relate to feeling overwhelmed, doom scrolling and reading things, and I'm like just trying to make sense of the world, and taking all this information, both in my personal and professional lives. And the attention spans, the data, again, because I love data. I'm a marketing nerd. The attention spans have dropped by 50% or 30% in the past 20 years, right? You have 8 seconds now, down from 12. Wasn't super impressive in the first case, but 8 seconds you have, and that's when they've already chose to engage with something that you putting in front of them, whether that be an email or landing page after they've clicked on an ad. You have 8 seconds, right? So empathize with the customer and say, well, what would pull you in 8 seconds, right? Is it relevant? Is it speaking to you? Is it answering the questions that you have? Does it align with the search query that you wrote and they came from? Okay. And how is it interesting, right? What story are you telling? So once you get the relevancy right, the storytelling, the quality of that matters a lot. And let's be honest, we're all very aware of advertising today, right? How many times have you scrolled through Facebook or that's an ad? Nope, keep going, right? But oftentimes we do engage with ads. Like if I was actually coming to this conference and seeing how I could maximize the ability for the company to pay for me to come here and still have some fun in Miami. So I'm actually going on a cruise. My wife came down with me. We're going on a cruise this weekend, and I was actually searching cruise options, and then later got distracted. Was on Facebook, and I got some great videos that came up that were super interesting, very to the point about the best cruises that depart from Miami. I actually watched them and engaged with because it was relevant. It was contextual to the content experience that I'm having, and I found it very useful. So when we're crafting these experiences, we need to really make them valuable and trustworthy and worthy of people's attention. So one way we do this, and we help the machine recommend content as well that follows this narrative, is tell a very simple human story. And it really starts with, what am I looking at? Why does it matter? Why should I care? How does it work? How's it going to benefit my life? Who's using it, or who can validate it? right? That's a very simple story, but oftentimes what we see, especially with post-click landing pages, the area we focus on, people put a bunch of stuff on the page because they're like, I don't know what they're going to be exactly what they want to see. Let's just throw a ton of stuff there and hope it sticks. But what we've seen is actually the opposite. Simplicity and clarity, story, and a continuous story always work far better. So when I come there and I'm reading that email or I'm on that landing page, what is it that I'm looking at? What makes it unique? Why should I care? Right? Why should I stick around? Why are you better? How I go about using this thing or how this service works, and who can validate it. Those simple things tell very compelling, coherent stories, and they're going to keep our attention, and we'll appreciate them for respecting our time. So the new customer journey really looks like this. First, it starts with personalization. So before you go about doing this and try to invest in this, really try to get insights, whether you're doing some of that manually or you're using technologies to better understand. Who are your audiences? What motivates them? Where do they live? And how should you best communicate to them? The second one is relevancy. So I talked about it a second ago, but what context are they in? Are they on Facebook? If I'm on Facebook and I'm scrolling, I'm absolutely not in the same, mindset as I would be if I'm on Google searching something with intent to find, a cruise. Like, what's the cheapest cruise options, right? That is a far different experience that I'm having than just scrolling. And if you misalign that way of communicating, it's going to be completely irrelevant, and you're going to waste your time. You're going to be wasting your money. So always think about context and relevancy in that moment, in that interaction. And intent is very similar to relevancy, but the intent can really be based on what stage in the process is the customer. If I'm sending an email and they've already had an interaction with me, what would be the next natural progression of that buyer intent, right? What does a search query tell me about someone's mentality, right? What intents do they have? If they have an informational intent and they want just broad-based information, and I'm sending them directly to like a, hey, purchase this, you're probably going to fail because that's not their intent right now. They want to just get some generalized information, right? Don't try to ask for the conversion too early. So let's talk about some specifics. So, I didn't see 100% of people's hands go up when we talked about incorporating AI into your day-to-day process. So let's talk about one thing that you can do immediately to start taking advantage of the technologies for where they're at today. So that is AI copywriting. And AI copywriting is already and will basically, everyone will adopt this over the next few years. And let's look at that. Okay, but before I go into that, I want to remind everyone, this is not about machines. This is not about the Terminator coming down, obliterating jobs, and destroying humans. It's more of the Tony Stark human robotic interaction, right? What is the human doing the best, and what can the machines do, right? So when you're going into this, don't be fearful that this is going to put your job at risk. This is about, machines are great at scale. Machines are great at context. Machines are good at helping us ideate and making recommendations. And we're good at curating and creativity and empathy. So this is truly a cohesive relationship, and it will be for quite some time. So let's enter AI copywriting. You may be more familiar with it than you think. So there's 3 different examples of tools here. But first of all, who here spends any of their time marketing, doing any type of writing? Okay, good 30, 40, maybe 50%. We'll give another 10% for those of you who are too shy to raise your hands. But generally, we communicate one way or another, and at least someone on our team does. These are 3 different tools. Who here has heard of Grammarly? Seen an ad? All right, so that's the majority of you. Now, we actually made this a requirement in our company because, not to disrespect anyone, just because we write so much so often that even improving our tone based on our brand, so you can actually load in the tone of your brand that you want to convey, and just the increased professionalism of punctuation and sentencing and whatnot is a profound tool, and we actually saw a statistically significant lift when our sales team adopted it to start communicating to clients in their emails and in the content that we're editing for landing pages and emails. And now we're using both our own tools, but also copy.ai, which is fantastic to help ideate for ads and for blog posts or for headlines. And it's taking the context of billions of web pages and helping better understand, what might be a better way to communicate. So those are some tools right there that you can start today. So if you want to get a screenshot of that real quick, go ahead. I think there'll also be this deck available for everyone to access. So let's have some fun for a second. I want to make this interactive. We're gonna do a fun little exercise where there's gonna be two different ads, and I want everyone to pick which one you think was written by a machine, completely written by a machine. A variation off of the content that they provided. So take a second to read these. We did choose I also wanted to put a funny one in here. So this is a diaper company. It's doing quite well. They're direct to consumer retail company. So take a second and read those. Hopefully you can read those. All right. You guys done reading those? These are ads, right? Mind you. So you got a headline, you get a description. Who thinks that the first one, by raise of hands, was written by a machine? Okay, we got about 9 to 10 people. Who thinks the second one was written by machine? Okay, so a little bit more, maybe like 15 people or so. So most people think the second one was written by a machine. Well, the interesting thing is both of these were completely written by a machine, right? So it was a little bit of a trick question. Maybe some of you knew that. I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to be proven wrong here. But these are examples here of ones written by humans. Let's bring these in. And we are getting to the point, and again, the machine would recommend a near infinite combination of ads, right? So if you've ever had to be tasked with ads and you're hitting some wall on ideating and creativity, you could have an endless list of things that you could help curate. But increasingly, we're getting to the point where natural language processing and communication and even creativity, is getting better and better and increasingly indistinguishable from what a human would write. But again, it's about this relationship. A lot of the recommendations it's going to make, you're going to need to say, oh, I'm going to approve of that one, or I'm going to decline that one, and we're going to help reach the scale in which we need. Now, we've been guilty of creating ads and then letting them run stale for months on end, but now we don't need to do that because we can come in and we can generate 5 new ones and say, okay, these 3 look good, let's plug them in, maybe edit it a little bit. But increasingly, it's really getting indistinguishable from a human, and at a much faster pace than we would have predicted, 5, definitely 10 years ago. So let's talk about some other examples. So let's look at these 2 display ads here. This one's by Chase. And Chase and the next example, they didn't go out looking for AI. They went out looking for how they're going to increase personalization. And their solution ended up being using some various AI tools. This first one is Chase using a company called Versado. And this particular example here, using the AI came up with this content on the right. And it was interesting to us that the computer chose to use a lot more personal language. It's saying you, right? It says, regarding your car. Well, that's probably going to get my attention a lot better when it's personal than just hurry, it ends December 31st, right? Okay, what ends? I don't care. That looks like advertising. Get that out of here. The other one here, uses it a couple more times. In the description, 5% cashback is waiting for you, and the machine came up with this. can't say exactly how, but it's, these computer systems have scanned, again, billions of web pages and seen tens of thousands or millions of ads. And this was a 500% increase in clicks, right? Almost one out of every 4 people who saw this ad clicked on it. That is a huge impact to the bottom line, if you're Chase, right? And that would be huge impact to any of us and any of our businesses. Another example here is eBay. So eBay, using a different system, has millions of users, and they know that personalization has a huge lift on their ability to drive customer engagement and interaction and use of the platform. And they're generating now, I think it's in the tens of thousands of different permutations of their emails. So that the machine helps generate a lot of different personalization. It knows how the customer is using the site, what's interesting them, and it just automatically produces these emails. And the humans come in and they edit and they curate and they kind of review them and they approve them to go out. And they've seen a massive lift in both engagement, email opens because the headlines are more relevant, and they're never going back, right? But they never were able to have the scale in which they have today. Again, it's about the scale because customers want relevancy. So hopefully by now you've realized that now is the right time. Don't wait. Now is the right time to leverage AI content. At least starting with playing around with some of these writing tools, these recommendation tools. And if you can find the right balance, then you're going to succeed. And it starts with human touch, right? We need to come in. We need to understand what's valuable to our customers, and we need to then start using these systems. And hopefully, if we're going to use these technologies, we also understand that it's a data thing as well. We need to have as much data as we can to give the technologies a chance to do what they do the best. And it is a balance. And one way to do this is, if we're going to get started today, finding a partner is oftentimes the best way to get going, right? Find a partner, a tech-enabled service, someone that already knows this, a consultant, and help them onboard you into this so that you can both push your career along faster, but also do so because you're generating big results for the companies that you work for, the companies that you started. There's a lot of partners, and these partners are increasing. Some of these partners are, again, just consultants or people, but a lot of these partners are technologies. Ones that we've listed, our company, Postclick, we have a relationship we build with our customers. We educate them on how to do this. And one great example is that oftentimes when people come to us, they're really stuck in the way things have always been done. They want maximum control over the design of their pages, and they have all these nitpicky things. And we're like, look, what do you want? What do you value? Do you value conversions and results? Or do you value, moving that pixel or that image over here to the right? What do you really care about at the end of the day? And it always, most times we've seen people that still resist the reality of the results. But people say, okay, no, we're here for conversions, right? So then we can help them change their mentality on how they're actually going to act now that we have these technologies, rather than how they've always done things. And again, oftentimes those partners that you're finding are going to be partners maybe that can help you get the data that you need to help lay that infrastructure, or to onboard the right technology so you can first have the data you need to even get started leveraging these technologies. Because again, before you start doing personalization and relevancy, you need to have context on who even you're talking to. And in a lot of ways, the advertising services that we already have available to us help us do this. We don't need to necessarily know exactly what someone's motivations are to get them to click on an ad. Google is increasingly making it so they're matching the right text, these dynamic search ads or these responsive search ads, to figure out and place the right content in front of the customer, right? So there's a lot of tools that will help you do that as well. And if you're going to win in this future, this now, where this is where it's going, regardless of if that's how we want things to happen or not. It's happening. We need to start right now. You've got to get ahead of your competitors. You've got to get ahead of your competition in terms of accelerating your career and bringing value to your companies. So get started now, even if it's a little bit, even if it's playing around with something like Grammarly, right? And then showing your team, look at how much time this has saved me. Look at the results, right? And start putting your foot in the door. Or invest in a specialist. Make the case to your company, hey, the proof is in the data, right? If you want to get ahead, I mean, it will pay for itself. If your ads go from 3% to 15%, well, you just paid for your position, of course, and more, and hopefully you get a promotion for that, right? But it pays for itself, and specialists can help accelerate that process. And again, build a hybrid model to start. What are you going to bring? What are you going to focus on? And what are you going to offload to the technology, right? I told you this was going to be a more nerdy conversation. Marketers are seeing effective personalization as a key opportunity. Again, this comes from data that we've collected from people, just some interesting data points for you. 77% of marketing leaders say that post-click strategies are very important to their organization, right? Again, this is what we focus on because we focus so long on getting clicks, getting engagement. But what happens after we've got their attention? We've neglected it for a long time. In big part because it's hard. It's much easier to produce thousands of ads than it is to produce thousands of post-click experiences, right? It's easy to write a single email, blast it out to 1,000 people, than it is to create 1,000 variations of that email for 1,000 people. So people are increasingly recognizing the importance of post-click. Now, let's talk a little bit about experimentation and optimization. A lot of us have heard about A/B testing. Okay, well, even though most people haven't even adopted A/B testing yet to a proficient degree, A/B testing is no longer even efficient. It's no longer even sufficient. You need to be testing A through Z, right? But again, that's basically impossible. I've tried really hard for a long time. You need to be doing A through Z. And of course, the same goes with personalization. So let's talk about one technology that's increasingly being infused in these conversion platforms, again, ourselves included. We're using an AI algorithm called multi-arm bandit. And what multi-arm bandit is, first of all, it's a name that clearly a nerd came up with. But essentially what it is and what it stands for is hypothetically, if you had a gambler in front of a bunch of slot machines, you have one here, 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 and here, and they don't know exactly what the slot machines are going to pay out until they start playing. So at first, if I'm the gambler, I'm going to start, pulling the lever on all of these machines and starting to realize, what they pay out, how frequently, they win. But increasingly, I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to spend time over here on this one because the payout's smaller. I'm going to increasingly start playing the other ones and predicting that, it seems probable that these ones are going to lead to better results. And this is exactly how multi-arm bandit works to start automating and mainstreaming conversion optimization, right? And it's going to start increasingly. So in the case of landing pages, it's going to increasingly start to weight the traffic based on the prediction that this one's going to do better. Now, it's not going to show zero traffic to the other ones, but it's going to start to weight and change how people flow into what version they see. And this is true with emails and ads. And this machine learning algorithm has come a long way because of the data that we have, and it reduces ad spend. It's a much faster time to conversion results. You don't have to wait around for a month of traffic. You don't even need that much traffic. Most times, this algorithm here, because it's a predictive machine learning algorithm, only needs about 100 people to see it and interact. Depending on the number of variations you have, but if you say you have 3, it takes about 100 before it can start predicting with accuracy. So it's available to people today. So let's talk a little bit about a world where personalization matters, but in a world where increasingly it's cookieless, right? Not chocolate chip cookies and snickerdoodles, but cookies that we've relied on as digital marketers Because again, how many of us have iOS devices where we clicked on it and we say, no, thanks, I don't want you to have my data. So what do we do in that world? Well, there's a number of things that we can do. Well, increasingly, we need to focus on reassessing our key performance indicators, our goals. We need to focus again on better messaging. And we need to do things like UTMs, right? And if you're not the nerd on your team, say, hey, what are we doing about UTMs? Because UTMs are, a URL extension that can tell, wherever I'm sending that customer to, it can tell them the context in which they came. So we can match up the content in a line. And again, you can find tools and technologies to help leverage this. There's some more data points for you. I'm not going to go over them because we're running out of time here. Also, consider an omni-channel approach. Most of us are doing many things. We do one thing better than most, but really try to think about where you're missing gaps, right? What's your, 5,000 YouTube video strategy? I think you could probably get away with maybe 100 or 500. Do you have a loyalty program? Are you establishing partnerships? Because partnerships are a great way to do personalization because they know their audiences. They already know what to tell them that would make them interested in what you have to offer. So all in all, it's 2022, halfway through 2022, and today and increasingly, it calls for marketers to work smarter, not harder, right? Smarter, that machines will do the hard part, and leverage tech-enabled personalization solutions, right? Where technology is part of the equation more than ever. So I just want to give you an example of the world in which we operate, and we operate in a world that's building content, right? We had a vision that we're trying to still usher in, that there's not going to be pages. There's not going to be a page, a website page, landing page. There's going to be a URL, right? And that page morphs and evolves over time as consumer behavior changes, right? The page changes based on who's seeing it. The messages changes based on what it thinks is going to work better. The layout changes, right? There is no page that we built and we said, here it is, it exists, send traffic to it. It's a destination, and that constant experience evolves, right? It evolves because the machine is figuring out what works across the whole platform based on the industry and use case in which we operate. And that's what we're focused on over at Postclick. And that's going to happen with more and more things. So that is my conversation today. Hopefully you enjoyed taking a journey with me on the nerdy side of marketing. If you're interested more in what we talked about today, you can check out our podcast if you're interested in being on that podcast. We'd love to have you on there as well. It's called Visionaries. Or you can just follow us on Instagram if you like to just get some sound bites or some cool updates on what's happening in the world of machine plus marketer. You can follow us there as well. And all in all, I just want to end it on. I'm going to end it on here. I just want to end it on remembering. Let's do this. There we go. Remembering what we're all here doing as marketers, right? Marketers are oftentimes increasingly and always, frankly, vilified a little bit because we develop advertising, we develop messages to get people to buy things. But I think it's time for us to up level and earn respect back, right? I think being a marketer is really cool. We're thinking about how people think, what motivates them. We're helping introduce them to new potential products or services that can improve their lives, their experiences that they have. But it is time that we up level the quality in which we're operating. We're speaking to people like they matter. We're speaking to them like we respect their privacy and their world, their experiences. And the only way that we're going to actually do this in a digital world where technology has proliferated is if we join with the machine and we use what they do best and we focus on what we do best, which should really be being creative, being unique, being communicators, right? That's what we do best. But it's a call to action to up level how we're operating collectively as an industry, or we will become increasingly irrelevant and a nuisance to people. And I don't think that's the way that we want our careers to develop. So thanks so much. If you care to, let's pull this one up. If you're interested in learning more about machine and marketing trends, you can scan this. I think it links to some cool content we put up here. So scan that, grab that content. Thanks so much. I think I have a couple minutes for a couple questions, if we have any.
Tyson, yes, I have a question really quickly. To do your customer journey, you need to understand customer personas. Who are the buyer personas? And you need to build these. A lot of it is done manually. Are you aware of any tools where you can just load behavioral data into and will build your customer segments and personas for you? AI tools?
So there's a couple of things. So first of all, an example, it depends what piece of the marketing funnel or the job you're to be done. The question was, am I aware of any tools or solutions that can help us um, connect to a data set or whatnot to try to figure out more about our customers, right? So we even know what to start saying to them. Well, the first example is like Grammarly. Grammarly actually has the Grammarly business solution, lets you load in any information about just even broad based who your industries are, like who you're focused on, and it knows because it has this massive data set on what actually they've seen works well for like those particular industries and segments. And then on the targeting side, well, we already have solutions like Google and Facebook, and they already understand generally what might motivate someone to click. And so, stop doing the manual versions of those. Use the dynamic search keyword, dynamic search ads. Use the responsive search ads, and Facebook also has dynamic content ads where you can just give it a bunch of content and it figures out the right match. And with landing pages and whatnot, obviously we have a solution. There's plenty of other ones out there. But if you don't have any at all, you can always just also glean some basic information from putting Google Analytics in and seeing where people are coming from and what industries they operate in, or even there's many other tools kind of mine traffic that's coming to your site that will give you context on who exactly is coming there, what industries they're in. I don't have any. I wish I had more like specific tools to offer, but that's the best I can provide for now. Any other questions? I think we had one right here.
I have a cool device.
What's your name?
My name's Kasai.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. It's a two-part question.
Okay.
Okay, so as an amateur marketer, what was one of the biggest mistakes that you made or like toughest lessons learned as an amateur marketer? And then with the knowledge that you have now, more experience in the field, what would you have done differently?
That's a fantastic question. So the question is, when I was an amateur marketer, maybe I still am. I don't know. I hope not. What mistakes did I make? And now, as I've learned, what would I do differently, and how have I evolved? Well, I think the number one mistake that I made is overcomplicating things. Right? I felt like I need to put a lot of information to things and say so much, but I realized it doesn't work. Not only because people's attention spans are so limited, but because it's an unfocused, inhuman message. If I'm talking to someone and they ask me a question in person, I'm probably not going to go on a giant monologue and list everything that, like all the benefits, because people are going to tune out. So I think it comes back to what I was talking about, meaningful quality experiences, like being very succinct and straightforward in a congruent, cohesive way of how you're conveying value. And I like to think about it again, and it works almost every time. Think about what am I talking about? What's different about it? Why they should care, how it's going to work, and then who can validate that, right? And you can do that in all of the marketing that you're doing, whether it's speaking at an event, or writing ads, or doing landing pages, or writing any type of marketing material, sales pitches or whatnot. Just thinking about that is going to make you stand out, and they're going to remember it. It's going to answer all the core questions that they have, and it's really comes back to working smarter, not harder, right? Just thinking very succinctly and remembering that you're talking to a person who has a limited attention span, who needs to understand the key differentiation and value in a very quick way. I love that question. Awesome. All right. Do we have any more questions before we send you off? Okay.
Next question for you. How much time did you guys see was saved by switching over to using AI-generated ad copy, for example? Maybe paid search ads, Facebook ads, that type of copy, versus how much time that is now spent proofing and editing those ads?
Right. So the question is, how much time did we save, or have we saved, using AI to help, in this example, generate ads, versus now how much time we're spending editing and kind of reviewing them? And that's a hard thing to quantify because if we just looked at doing what we were doing previously, which is a much smaller scale, I would say it saves a little bit less time. I would say it's a 2 to 3x improvement using it because it ideates faster, and the editing the editing portion maybe takes a third of as much time as it does writing a new one. Where it really comes in play is the scale, right? We're always like very limited in our scale because we don't have time to write 500 to 1,000 ads. Like, what are you talking about? 3 is doable, and that's what we were doing. Maybe refreshing it every other month or so. But when we're doing 1,000, that's something that we weren't even doing before, and now it's possible for like a single marketer in a month to help ideate using the machines, 1,000 or more, and then edit those things. And the editing is much faster than the ideating.
And then from the scale standpoint, is that also scaling 100 different or 1,000 different ads for the diver client?
Yep.
Just say, we could have 100 clients in itself with 100 different industries.
Yeah.
A couple different ads each type of thing, and really see the benefits of doing that on that type of scale.
Are you asking, do we see the results and the benefit of doing that type of scale?
Yeah, just first like one client versus 1,000 clients.
Yeah.
1,000 different industries. Like, are you seeing the same results?
And is that what you mean by the whole scale?
But mostly by the scale, I mean, there's only a limited number of industries because a lot of us don't operate where there's 1,000 industries. I think it's less on the industry differentiation. That's still a part of it. That's typically much easier to do. But it's more on the person, the individual.
Okay.
And it's very hard for us to predict exactly what someone's mindset is in. Now, it's easy, again, if you're a salesman at a car lot, they come to you, they ask you, this is what I want to know. You're like, oh, okay, I'll answer these questions you have. But when we're doing digital marketing, digital advertising, we don't have the full context of that. But what we do have is helping align search queries that they make, which I forget the number, but Google says something like 30 to 40% of search queries they get every day they haven't seen before because they're asked in a different way. But then for us, the big problem that we've seen is that problem is increasingly solved, right? Especially now with things like the dynamic search queries and whatnot to just change the headline and the content. But on the post-click side, if you're doing like landing pages or emails or whatnot, how do you get a similar benefit? And that's where the scale comes in play, right? And now, with what we're focused on, how do you actually match that relevancy from ad to page? So it's a continuation of that relevant message because an ad's very short, right? You actually have more complexity in continuing that story of value. But we are focused on making the scale that you have on Google Ads or Facebook on the place you're sending them to as well. And Persado and others are focused on doing it for email and other things as well. And you'll be surprised about the number of things that comes up with. I would have never thought about that. Or I would have never. We actually have fun. We'll do some bets sometimes on if a person can beat the machine on various things. And the human winning by themselves is 12% of the time. So people increasingly don't make those bets. When the person is working with the machine, they almost always win. It's 80+% of the time. And the machine itself wins, by itself 20 or around a little under 20% of the time. But again, we can't even come up with, we don't know. You know what I mean? Let the machine help assist in all these different messages for the individual, not necessarily the industries.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. We do have some nerds in here. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Hopefully you got your brain spinning a little bit, and I'm excited to hopefully have some of you adopt some of these machine capabilities. All right. Thank you.